because I think he's got a frame that will be able to carry the weight, anchor, and run defense. But again, athletic and so long to get out and handle things in coverage as well. I just think this is a absolutely terrific pickup for K-State.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here as always with my good friend Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Speaking of local recruiting, Ryan and I went out to Blue Springs today to talk with our number one 2026 player in the Kansas City Metro, defensive lineman Ronelle Johnson, as he gets ready to take his trip to Missouri to wrap up his official visits before eventually making his commitment. You won't want to miss that. As always, if you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. Speaking of which, we should be a little bit easier to find now on Apple or Spotify with our new specific audio channel through KCSN, so you have a consistent place to find us every week. Listen to the show and help us continue to grow and get in front of more people like you. A week ago, we had 5 Kansas State commitments to talk about, and the Wildcats continued their momentum with 5 more pledges over the last week. 3 of those players were defensive backs, starting with safety Hannibal Carter-Navies of Grayson High School in Georgia, then hitting Missouri in Fort Zumwalt West for cornerback Garrett Dixon. Kansas State also stayed in Missouri for defensive back Nick McClellan from St. Louis Power CBC. The Wildcats went just south to get Tahlequah, Oklahoma defensive lineman Kingston Hall. And today, as we film on Tuesday night, went a little bit further south for Wolf City, Texas, running back H.D. Davis earlier today. As with last week, Ryan, I'm not sure where exactly you want to start with this group.
Yeah, they're on a heater, as the graphic says there. And we've talked about this too, because I think KU has done a really good job. Honestly, a lot of the Midwestern schools do a really good job of capitalizing on official visits, right? You get kids that maybe have never really experienced the campus before, don't really know everything that the program and the community have to offer. And I know from all my years covering K-State that seems to be kind of the ace up the staff sleeve, whether it was Bill Snyder or Chris Kleiman. We feel like once we get these guys on campus, there's a better opportunity for us to seal the deal, especially if you can couple that with kids that can see a game day in the fall. So in terms of, the kids that they were able to maximize these visits on here most recently, I'm a huge fan of Nick McClellan at CBC. A kid that has been athletic enough to get on the field even as a sophomore and be a quarterback at times as a rotational quarterback for a team that went to the state championship. And then he comes in and, Kevin, it's CBC. Like, they can go out and get quarterbacks, or quarterbacks will come knocking on their door. And Nick McClellan is still able to hold that job last year, might hold it again as a senior, but he's athletic enough. He's got the character makeup, the leadership, the IQ to then flip over to DB for K-State. And so, again, kind of furthering that pipeline into St. Louis. They got Dylan Duff last year. You mentioned Garrick from Dixon from Fort Zumwalt West that they were able to get out of the St. Louis area. So I think that's huge. And then you and I were talking. I'm a big fan of Kingston Hall. He's a hoss out of Tahlequah. Love the fit there. But you and I were talking also about H.D. Davis. 3,800 yards over the last 2 years in Texas. And I know it's Class 2. But you and I have some guys down there that we frequently talk to, and they signed off on H.D. Davis as a guy, as a dude. So, a lot to like about him, and sign it kind of some Daniel Thomas, kind of style that I would compare him to. I don't know where he lands. They're taking a lot of good, just football players, forgetting position, which I also kind of like, when staffs tend to do that. Just get good athletes on and figure it out later. And I think that's what H.D. Davis and a number of other guys are going to bring to Manhattan, is just good football players.
Yeah, Davis is a little bit of a taller back, and so, is a little bit more upright maybe. But one, guys don't square him up very often. He's very physical, even with that height. And with the athleticism, Ryan, that makes you think, hey, this kid works out a running back, great. If not, could be a pretty good defensive player.
No doubt. No doubt. Hang on. Oh, okay. Hey, Nick, can you fire that up one more time for me? Can you fire that graphic up? I think we've got a special urgent announcement here.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, we've seen that one. Come on, Nick. We've got, brother. Oh, Kevin. Look at that, my friend. Look at that. What do you see there, Kevin?
That looks like Lawson McGraw decked out in Kansas State gear.
Is that so? I believe that's a little commitment alert.
Yeah, that definitely looks like
because the Team Fun tape is following Dad's footsteps, baby.
That's a terrific get for Kansas State. I mean, even leaving out the John McGraw stuff, right? Like John McGraw was a terrific player, had 10-year NFL career.
Yeah.
Even leaving that behind, if you didn't know any of that and you just said, hey, here's this 6'4", 220-pound guy with that kind of athleticism, with the kind of football skill he possesses where he can play a lot of different positions. Ryan, what are the Wildcats getting here?
Well, Lawson thought he could kind of sneak this past us, right? We're like 15 minutes to our kind of recording session here on Tuesday night. And we said, not letting Lawson slip by for another week. We had to talk about him because he's been one of our favorite players for so long. I mean, you and I were pounding the table for this kid back in October. I mean, even before that, when we initially released the 2026 top 10 in Kansas, he was a guy that you and I were talking about, like, do we put him at number 10? Like, and we decided we wanted to see a little bit more of him in person. Finally got to do that. And it was like, yeah, this kid's the real deal. There's everything that you want in a linebacker, an outside linebacker. Maybe he does bulk up into kind of a stand-up edge kind of player that they can bring in pass rush, in pursuit, because I think he's got a frame that will be able to carry the weight, anchor, and run defense. But again, athletic and so long to get out and handle things in coverage as well. I just think this is a absolutely terrific pickup for K-State. Kevin, you and I were getting a little nervous here. He goes to K-State camp. He trains with the D-ends. I was like, it's not really what he does. He goes to KU. He's with tight ends. I'm like, man, is this gonna, not happen for Lawson? Is he gonna have to go the FBS route, transfer portal, then to the Power 4 market? Turns out that K-State ended up pulling the trigger, got the offer done. I thought he might do an announcement on Father's Day, which would have been really cool. Yeah. Maybe it was kind of coordinating the graphic pieces and all that too, because I know he was coming off a visit. So maybe that held it up for a couple of days, or he wanted to get home and chew on it. But long-winded answer, Kevin. I'm happy for this, A, for Lawson, because he deserves a Power 4 opportunity, but also B, I'm really happy that this is, in today's day and age, this could have been one of those cases where K-State and other folks said, we'll get him later in the transfer portal. We need to take guys that are maybe more ready right now. And I'm glad that K-State decided, no, we don't want to take the chance. Let's do this. He's a legacy, and let's make it happen right now.
When you look at this 2026 class in the state of Kansas, we kind of had that top two being 1A, 1B with J.J. Dunnigan and Ian Premer. Maybe a slight gap, two or three, maybe four guys, kind of being right there on that 4-star edge, if you will. And then, when we were doing our rankings, I feel like, Ryan, the gap between, say, like number 7 or number 8 and number 14 or 15 was pretty non-existent. Like, those guys were all kind of in the same basket, and it really came down to personal preference. And so I'm sure some people are going to look at Lawson's rating within the state and say, it's, he's the number. I didn't see where he's ranked with him, just deciding we didn't plan on him being on the show. With him being, number 12, number 13, number 14, wherever he's at in the state. I think if somebody looked at it like that, they're missing out, because I do think that this is a guy who is every bit as good as those guys, sort of on the bottom part of that top 10. And if somebody were to walk onto our show and say, I think Lawson McGraw is the 8th best player in the state, Ryan, I don't know that I'd have a great argument against that.
No. I think this could be, a senior season for Lawson where he makes the case to make a serious push into our top 10, but also a lot of the, recruiting industry's top 10 around the state.
Lawson McGraw's commitment gives Kansas State 15 commitments in the 2026 class. Initially had that as 14 when I wrote that for the show and didn't have Lawson in there. Ryan, bars have a 1-in, 1-out policy when they start to fill up, as we both know, of course. Kansas had a 2-in, 1-out week.
They're still fired up.
The Jayhawks come down to their final few spots in this class. Kansas lost a big one in defensive tackle from Oklahoma, Landon Anderson, when he decommitted. He was one of our favorite guys in Kansas class. But they added another Sooner State defensive tackle with Southmore's NaQuane Carter. And just before that, Kansas added to its tight end room with a local prospect, Rockhurst tight end Kevin Sullivan. Right, let's go ahead and start with Sullivan because he is a local guy. That gives the Jayhawks 2 pretty good tight ends from the Kansas City area when you add in Platte County's Jack Hoots.
Yeah, I mean, Sullivan was a kid that we were able to see last year in person against St. Thomas Aquinas. It was the type of game that, Rockhurst didn't get a chance to have a lot of protection to get him involved as much as other games that you saw kind of from his junior tape. But this is a big frame kid and a kid that I think, like Jack Oots, is what maybe we would consider more of your complete tight end. He's a guy that I think is a little bit more inline ready, probably not as inline as Jack, just from a physical toughness mentality. No offense to Kevin there, but I also think in Kevin's favor from a pro standpoint, I think he's a little bit more natural as a pass catcher. I think he's going to be able to stretch the field a little bit. Maybe not exactly a burner, but super reliable in those intermediate routes and still athletic enough, and probably has a little bit more athleticism that they're going to be able to tap into in Lawrence, where maybe he can separate a little bit after the catch as well at the next level.
I'm a big fan of Carter, too. He's a guy that I think really fits that mold of what Jim Panagos takes for defensive tackles. Guys that are sort of in that 255 to 270 range, have the frame to continue to add more weight. He's a really high level, sort of heavyweight wrestler. And you really see the hand usage is really active and violent. The feet never stop moving, and he seems like a really nice addition to that Kansas defensive line class as well.
And then real quick, we'll touch on it a little bit later next week, we'll have maybe a friendly debate about what this tight end commitment could mean for another tight end. Sure. It will be more noteworthy next week. But real quick, I know we've been long-winded here, but Landon Anderson, for KU fans that are kind of interested in that one, I don't want to say good thing, bad thing. Obviously, it's a bad thing anytime you lose a player with talent, but kind of your synopsis of how that went down and what it means for KU in the 2026 class.
Yeah, I really liked Landon Anderson. I felt like there's sort of this, what Kansas typically takes at defensive tackle, and Landon felt a little bit like an elevated version of that to me. When you look at, Ryan, both of us like to eat, and there's places you go where, you get mac and cheese and it's basically Kraft mac and cheese. And there's places you go where they throw pulled pork on it, or they, the breadcrumbs, or they use 5 cheeses. And, there's different sort of things. It's all mac and cheese, and it's all pretty good, but there is sort of a little bit of an elevated version to that. I'll be honest with you. I think Oklahoma is crazy for not offering Landon Anderson. He visited Oklahoma State this past week. The people that I talked to say that Arizona State is a real contender now that he is decommitted from Kansas. So don't be surprised if he winds up in the Big 12. But, looking at what Brent Venables likes from defensive linemen, that's one that really surprises me that Oklahoma hasn't made a move on Landon Anderson. So like you said, big loss. Carter is a really good player coming in. I think he's kind of more in line with what Kansas has found and what Kansas has had success with in the past. I really like friend of friend of the show, Michael Swain, compared him to Devin Phillips, who KU was able to get a couple years ago, spent 1 year with the Jayhawks and was pretty good, was maybe Kansas's best defensive tackle that year. And so a good comparison there. Kansas will take another defensive tackle, I would expect, in this class. And so I think they have some options there, but obviously losing Anderson hurts. You do get a defensive tackle back kind of immediately, but yeah, one thing I will say though, Ryan, when I covered Texas, one of the things that Mac Brown used to say is it doesn't matter who you lose because there are enough good players out there. It matters who you bring in. And I think Carter is a good addition to the team and somebody that has a chance to be pretty good at Kansas.
Yep. It's all about how you pivot, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The Jayhawks have now collected 17 commitments, coming in at number 20 nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. I would love to tell you where K-State's class stacks up, but one, Lawson McGraw just committed, so it wouldn't be up to date. And two, I don't believe H.D. Davis has been rated just yet. And
I don't think Lawson has either. Fully.
And so I think next week we will be able to give you a better look at where the Wildcats class actually stacks up nationally as opposed to right now. Let's go ahead and get into player profiles, Ryan, where we pick one Kansas player and one player from the Missouri side of the Kansas City Metro who are flying under the radar from a recruiting standpoint, but maybe shouldn't be as much. Ryan, you're on Kansas this week, so who do you have?
I'm going with one of my deeper cuts that I feel like I've pulled so far this year. A kid that I just stumbled upon his film like back in January or December, really after his junior season ended, out at Atchison, member of the Atchison Phoenix, one of the great nicknames here, mascots here in the Metro. Leighton Boldridge is his name. And there's an interesting story here, Kevin. He's 6'1", 195. And so here's the thing about Leighton is as we roll his highlights, really all I need to say, Kevin, is this is a player who is playing football in these clips for the very first time. Like literally I could just let the highlights roll because I think is a statement in and of itself. He was a second team all league baseball player as well. Basketball team went to state. So he was doing some other things. But yet he was an honorable mention in football, all-state selection for Atchison, playing both ways. He's got really soft hands. You see the aggression here and the speed. He's lowered his 40 from 4.67 to 4.53 this offseason. I don't really know what he is. Maybe it is a running back because I think he does have, enough speed, right? And he's got the physicality and the athleticism, and you see some of the way that he jumps around. So maybe he can do that. But again, I think when you look at Leighton, you also have to factor in what he does in the other sports. And I think we've got some highlights there as well. This is a kid that can dunk off 1 foot in flip-flops, no less, as you see there. So you're getting a better idea of the athlete. And he can also go yard in baseball. Like, we're not talking about a guy that's a contact hitter. We're talking about a guy that was second team all league hitting homers, stretching the field and all these sorts of things. I really like Leighton Boldridge. Again, he's got Benedictine, Bethany, and Ottawa offers. I think maybe, that's where he starts, but I think there's another level for him. And Kevin, the comp that I have for him in a lot of different ways is a Rashad White.
Yeah.
And I know that is immense praise. We're talking about a guy that's in the NFL right now. But you think about Rashad White, he was 6'1", 195 coming out of center. He played football. He played basketball. He had to go to Nebraska Kearney because he had no D1 offers. From there, he didn't make it, had to go to Mount Sac JUCO, ends up at Arizona State, and the rest is history. Maybe that's Leighton Boldridge. I'm hoping that somebody gives this kid a shot because I just think there is so much left to be tapped into that it might take him a year or two at a lower level to get there. But I think that there's a lot to like about where his football trajectory goes. And I think, Jordan Malcolm, the first-year coach there at Atchison, has a real prize on his hands to lean on this fall.
Yeah, no offense to Benedictine or Bethel, obviously. But Ryan, this is a guy that if KU or K-State told me like, hey, we're bringing this kid in as a preferred walk-on, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that he is the type of guy that can come into your program and play at that level. I really do. Even if it's not necessarily a scholarship right away, I think you make a really good point that by the time he's a sophomore, whether that's coming out of a junior college, whether he goes somewhere smaller to start off, by the time he's a sophomore, he's a junior, it would not surprise me at all to see him be a power four type of guy based on the athleticism and the skill set there. I'm on Casey Moe this week. Ryan, I'm going to go with a quarterback and a three-sport athlete in Pleasant Hills, Sawyer Rich Creek at 6'2" and 195 pounds. Sawyer helped lead Pleasant Hill to a 7-2 record. He threw for almost 1,800 yards and 19 touchdowns. He's also a standout on the basketball court, and he's a hurdler on the track team, where he's also been a sprinter and a jumper in the past. But Ryan, the intriguing thing for me here with the basketball and track background, you kind of expect him to be this dual threat guy who's out here running around, right? And he can do that. He does have a highlight or two, as a runner, but really this is a guy who does most of his damage from within the pocket. His launch angle will vary at times. Sometimes it comes out a little 3/4. Sometimes it comes out almost sidearm. But the arm is there, and you can see him add the mustard when he needs to. You can see him lay it up softly for deep balls. He's comfortable throwing into tight spaces and really pushing the ball down the field vertically. Here you see that athleticism and the running part right there, but he doesn't show that as much as you would think for somebody with his athletic profile. Ryan, watch out for that Pleasant Hill passing game, by the way, with Rich Creek teaming up with speed demon and track teammate Kyler Wallace Riley.
That's my guy.
Who had one of the fastest top speed measurements at the recent Lindenwood Mega Camp. With that combination, you add in guys like Gabe Kohler on defense. Pleasant Hill could have a really nice season this year.
I was going to say real quick, just to add on, when I watched Sawyer Rich Creek, I thought he was risk averse.
Yeah.
He's not a guy that's going to be a riverboat gambler. He knows where the ball needs to be and he's not going to force it in. But he's, like you said, he's also got some good zip where he can fit it into tight windows. Strong intermediate passer. So again, Pleasant Hill, the Roosters, man, the Phoenix and the Roosters. Man, great show for these two. But, this is a really good program, too. Braden Bush came out of there. He's in Emporia State, was a hellacious linebacker. Brady Rowe last year. They've got some dudes out there, and I'm glad you mentioned Kyler Wallace Riley. This is a program with Sawyer Rich Creek, leading this offense. It's got a real chance to win the Class 4 District 7 title. And that would set up, a very, very tempting matchup with Kearney in the quarterfinals. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think you and I are putting Pleasant Hill in that type of vicinity this year with some of the guys that are on that program. I'm excited about what the Roosters have for this fall.
We'll talk more about the top players in Missouri in 2026 and have our interview with Blue Springs defensive lineman Ronelle Johnson here in a minute. And keep an eye out for our new partnership with Tacos for Life. We mentioned last week sort of what that will entail, and we're excited to roll that out. You get a chance to honor the city's best players once we do here in the next couple weeks. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Folks, it's playoff time, and if you're still just watching the games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competition, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers can get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdictions. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast. In the open, we talked about players who committed to Kansas State and Kansas over the past week, but we also wanted to touch on a local star who made his own commitment with DeZephen Walker heading over to Oklahoma. Ryan, we've both seen DeZephen multiple times. He's been on the show. We ranked him second in KC Mo for the 2026 class, and I think he's the kind of runner that it would not surprise either of us for him to not just have an impact, but potentially even an early impact at the next level.
Well, yeah, I think the speed is going to separate him, and maybe he's the type of kid that could get on the field even if he's not in the backfield, as an underclassman. Maybe it's in special teams as a kick returner, because I remember watching him do that. That was my first kind of intro to him, was his freshman year against Lee Summit North, and he took one back as a true freshman for Ray-Pec. So maybe that's where he gets it. I think this is a great job by Oklahoma and DeMarco Murray. Just when we thought maybe this thing looked like it was going to be Jamar Moses to lose and that he was destined to be a Cornhusker, here comes Oklahoma with kind of a late eval. Their board shook out the right way for DeZephen to get down there pretty quickly from a recruiting process in their minds and in our eyes. He gets down there and makes it happen pretty quick. So a good opportunity for him too, Kevin, in terms of the fit, right? Because Javante Barnes is a senior this year, so he'll be out of the way. And then you've got Taylor Tatum, who's a sophomore now, will be a junior for DeZephen's freshman year. So again, kind of a path for maybe him to get into that backfield sooner rather than later, again, under the SEC flag. So big time opportunity for him. Happy for DeZephen. Again, one of the more complete, true tailbacks that I can remember in Kansas City in quite some time.
It's kind of funny, too, wearing that number 28. Some running back named Adrian Peterson wore that number at Oklahoma. Those would be pretty big shoes to fill, obviously, with the Sooners. Like I said, we did have DeZephen on the show and wanted to congratulate him on his decision. Just ahead of him in our rankings, Ryan, is Blue Springs defensive lineman Ronelle Johnson. You and I both became really big Ronelle fans when we first saw him in person in the playoffs against Blue Springs South. It was a dominant individual effort that showed not just his individual skill set, his impressive individual skill set, but maybe his best trait, this kid's motor and the fact that he tries to impact every single play.
No doubt. And as you see kind of his player profile here, you see kind of where the industry ranks him, both positionally and in the state of Missouri. Again, that's the entire state of Missouri. For us, we're just grading him in the Kansas City Mo area. We have him number 1. And I'll be honest, Kevin, maybe he wouldn't be 1 or 2, in the entire state of Missouri, but I think you could talk both you and I into having him maybe 3 or 4. I think we think of him that high. I think 24/7 Sports is a little bit more accurate in the state in terms of having him number 5. But here's where I think what's interesting, that they might have it wrong, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but everybody seems to think of him as a defensive end or as an edge. And I think when you see 6'4", 260, and you see Ronelle in person, I think there's a real chance for him to get closer to like 6'4", 290 when it's all said and done. And you're seeing more of, obviously Chris Jones is the guy that comes to mind, but like more recently from they're SEC now, but from a Big 12 perspective when he committed, a guy like Tavondre Sweat at Texas. I remember when he committed to Texas as a major recruit, kind of like Ronelle, and he was like 6'3", 245 or something. And, he goes and plays his rookie campaign with the Tennessee Titans at over 300 pounds. And again, it's that you can be a good defensive end, or you can be a really solid kind of inside out swing defensive lineman like Ronelle, with athleticism, with more twitch. Right. And so I think that maybe that's where he's most destined, but I'm really glad you brought up the Blue Springs South game, because I have highlights strictly from that game and only that game, because as you said, it was one of the most impressive performances that I think we saw of any one player last fall. This is one game, and I know it's the semifinals of districts. I know that it's, win or go home. So you're leaving everything on the field, but he was a one-man wrecking crew against an offensive line that's got a ton of guys that are either going to FBS schools or FCS schools. I mean, this is a really talented Blue Springs offensive line, and he just mowed through it. The motor is unbelievable. He's a quiet kid, but I think a guy that just goes about his business and is tough, is just tenacious. But overall, Kevin, I think the thing that you and I liked most about him is beyond all of the things that I think he's advanced in fundamentally and technically, it's the fact that you get a kid that is as high profile as him, that wears the target on his back every week, and it would be really easy for him to take plays off, and he simply does not do it.
Yep, doesn't take plays off in practice, really. I mean, we were out at Blue Springs workouts today, and Ronelle wasn't the only player to catch our eyes, Ryan. Some of those guys we've talked about before on the show. One guy I did want to bring up, and I know we were going to talk about a few guys, but one guy, I think Mason Markle maybe stood out a little more to me because of the way that he's improved and grown.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Markle, I thought, was more impressive in person than even his high school tape was last year as a junior. I think Northern Illinois got a really, really good one. Smart for him to go ahead and kind of lock up that spot. And, maybe some bigger programs do come and test the waters a little bit this fall, because I think his tape will say that much. But he was really nimble on his feet. Like, the footwork really stood out, because you see, he's the type of guy on his junior tape that like is really physical, aggressive, like a nasty kind of lineman. But then we kind of got to see him be a little bit more of a dancer, a little bit more finesse in some of the team stuff that they were doing out there on Tuesday morning at Blue Springs. And I thought it showed kind of a mobility that maybe didn't show up on tape all that much, or as often as we were able to see in person, for sure.
Yeah, I think another guy, too, we talked about him a week ago, put him in our top 5 in KC Mo for 2027, based a lot on me seeing him in person at KU camp. What were your thoughts on Wyatt Erickson, seeing him in person today?
I think he's got a little bit of a moxie to him. And I think that you've seen him grow from his sophomore tape, where he was kind of under fire. We talked about it last week, doing things off balance and, out of the pocket. And so maybe there was a part of me that thought that he would be a little quiet, a little bit more meek. And no, he was out there getting into the music, really, barking some stuff at guys in terms of where they needed to be. I mean, he's taking control of that offense. I think that there's some other guys that maybe have a little bit more veteran presence than he does, or maybe a little bit more seasoned, but you can tell Wyatt Erickson has taken those next steps. The other thing, and I feel like I misspoke last week after seeing him in person, Kevin, is he's not undersized. On tape, he looks shorter than he is. This is a kid that I think in cleats and a helmet is pushing every bit of 6'2", certainly 6'1". And is probably the type of kid that, just seeing him in person, kind of the baby face, right? Probably got some more inches still left in him. So the accuracy is there and all those things, but I was really taken in person by the command that he's starting to take this offseason of that offense. Even though he knows he's just a junior, I think he knows the keys are officially in his hands this year, and it's kind of up to him to orchestrate what Ronelle Johnson does on defense for him on the offensive side.
We knew about Ronelle, Wyatt, Mason Markle, all of them heading in. Was there anybody today that surprised you that you were kind of like, okay, I need to keep a longer look on this guy moving forward?
Yeah, Michael Crable was a guy that the Blue Spring staff was, really high on. And I liked the fact that he could go from anywhere from like D end to linebacker. We saw him do some stuff, as an H-back. They've got a number of 2027s too that I think are going to be really intriguing here this season to kind of watch how their junior tape unfolds. Corey Mayfield is a kid that plays safety and running back for them. But, we were talking with Coach Paulson before the players came out, and Mayfield walks by, and, we were all talking about the physicality that he plays with on tape. And it's like, yeah, he's a pretty good running back. It's fun to see him kind of mow down some guys, but it's almost more fun to watch him kind of headhunt in a legal way on defense. He's got the speed, but he's got a really good frame on him too. So, he's a player that I think we've talked about for 2027. And, another kid that again is really intriguing for me. They've got, Zay Height out there that I know is starting to get some interest and another player at a skill position. But I keep coming back to a player and he might not pop right away, but I'm going to hang in there on Tyler Lindsey. There's something about Tyler Lindsey that I think is a 2027. He's still got room to fill out a little bit at the linebacker spot. He could play a little bit outside linebacker. He could play a little bit of inside, which is kind of, we saw him doing some stuff at Mike today. He is one that I'm kind of like, I think with some time, maybe there's something there. And one more player quickly, Kevin, a 2026 that kind of plays a similar kind of role as Lindsey. In fact, I think it's why we might see Lindsey go back more to a traditional linebacker set. And that was a 2026 that caught our eye today, Alonzo Franklin. We tweeted it out or posted it on X. I still say tweet on Verbal Commitment of a clip of him going around Ronelle Johnson. Ronelle Johnson was playing offensive tackle in this clip, and Micah Crable to get pressure on Wyatt Erickson. And you see a player that they have moved up from secondary to linebacker, and now he's kind of playing that outside linebacker and coming in off the edge. Again, whether he goes somewhere in college, I'm not sure. He's got the athletic profile to have one of those type of senior seasons where you're like, where's this kid been for the last 2 or 3 years? That defense, Kevin, at Blue Springs is going to be really, really stout and really dynamic this season.
For sure. Last week we interviewed Kyler Kuhn, our number one player in Kansas City, Missouri for 2027. This week we have Ronelle Johnson, the number one player in KC Mo for 2026. Stay tuned for his interview right after the break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Earlier today, Ryan and I traveled out to Blue Springs High School to check out workouts and get a chance to talk with defensive lineman Ronelle Johnson, who's set to take his final official visit this weekend. He's heading over to Missouri. And he let us know his thoughts about each of his finalists at this point, the visits he's had before, what he's looking for in Missouri, along with his thoughts on Blue Springs, what he's working on to improve his game, and both what he's looking for in his future college home and when he expects to make that decision. Take a look.
And obviously putting in work in the summer, how do you feel like workouts have been going for you guys?
I feel like they've been going pretty good. We've been getting a lot of contact and everything like that, just building up for the season.
And obviously you get to do a little bit of cross-training.
Yeah.
Normally you're tormenting offensive linemen. Now you get to kind of go out and play one. What's that like a little bit?
It's a little different just learning the plays on the offensive side. It's kind of good for me to be on the offensive side just to know what offensive tackles and what offensive linemen doing stuff for me playing on defense. So, yeah, it's pretty good.
We saw you in person in the playoffs against the Blue Springs South, and it was one of the more dominant individual performances that you had all year and that we saw all year. Was there any point in that game that you were just kind of like, man, like this is really going well, or it feels like I'm controlling this thing a little bit?
It was at a time where I felt like we had control of the ball, but then I feel like we got some Flares got their heads on and everything like that because offense wasn't really doing the work. But I felt like defensive side did the thing.
For somebody who hasn't maybe seen you play before, how would you describe yourself to him?
I would say have a motor, effort. Hard at the point of attack. Use my hands a lot. Just dominant at the point of attack.
Are all those things that college coaches are kind of telling you, like, hey, these are the things we like?
Yeah, when they put my film on, the first thing they say is they like my effort. I do a lot of effort on the field.
Is there something that you feel like you need to work on, or that college coaches are even telling you, like, hey, we'd like to see you improve at this?
Yeah, just with pass rushing, just having better hands and everything. That's it.
Okay, and obviously, you know, you're fairly deep in your recruiting at this point. You've taken 3 official visits so far, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who was your first visit to?
My first visit was to K-State. My second was to Indiana. Third last week was Ole Miss.
Well, going in order, what did you think of K-State, and what was that visit like?
It was a good visit. I had a really good connection with the coach. Just speaking and stuff with the ladies, you always that. I play it.
How do they see you fitting in on the defensive line there?
They see me fitting in at a hands position. They used last year run a 3 front, but they have a 4 down system now. So see me playing at the end, like a above type. Yeah.
And then Indiana, what was that experience like?
It was pretty fun. Just sitting there and listening to Coach Buddha explaining how he's gonna use me in the system and everything like that. Then talking to Coach Sig, it was a good experience.
Obviously, Coach Sig has a relationship with your own coach. Has that come up at all in the recruiting process?
Yeah, it came up a lot throughout the weekends, talking about how he coached them at NC State and everything like that.
Awesome. And then Ole Miss this past weekend. So, you know, you're Big 12 and then Big 10. What was it like to head there and see an Essex?
It was different facilities and everything. You realize like that. Just meeting Coach Joyner, he actually, like, it's a lot of coaches that preach development and everything, and he, like, broke down how development was and put up the presentation. Then it took me to go show me how you get developed at Ole Miss.
And what was that like with Coach Kiffin, and then Coach Schoonover's recruiting you locally, right?
Yes, sir. Coach Kiffin, I mean, it was a calm little conversation we had, everything. Coach Kiffin is a calm coach. Really doesn't talk much, but yeah, I really like it.
And then last but certainly not least, you have one more visit left, Missouri. What are you looking forward to on that visit?
I'm just looking how they're going to use me in their system and everything like that, and how I fit in.
Who's recruiting you for Missouri?
Coach Early.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what's that relationship like?
We've been having a good relationship ever since I got recruited by them and everything like that. It's been talked on and off. It's been good.
What are you looking for? Like when we say here in a little bit, like, hey, Ronelle Johnson picked school X because of blank. What do you think that factor is going to be?
To be honest, I'm looking somewhere where how I'm going to be using the system, where I feel safe at, the coach's loyalty and everything like that, and how I fit in with the Flares.
And with you finishing up your official visits this weekend, you want to make your decision a little bit later this summer?
It's sometime in July. I haven't found an exact date, but it'll be sometime out there.
What's that decision-making process going to be like? Like, hey, family members, coaches, like who do you plan on kind of hashing things out with to try it?
Probably family members and coaches, head coach, head boss, yes.
Ronelle, are you going into Missouri this weekend with an idea of kind of like a pecking order in terms of the 4 finalists, or are you still pretty wide open and you'll kind of start to determine that more after this weekend?
I'm pretty wide open to determine that this weekend.
Okay. When folks that haven't seen you play, you describe yourself, is there like a college or an NFL player that you kind of see your game in when you watch them on TV on Saturdays or Sundays?
I kind of describe myself like Chris Jones a little bit. And that's how it is. Very physical at the one contest. Yeah.
I would imagine you're a Chiefs fan then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For sure.
What does it feel like, speaking of just Kansas City, the Chiefs, you know, being kind of a guy to rep the city, right? Being our top player on KCSN, but also you enjoy kind of having the target on your back and wearing the city proudly when you go on these visits?
I mean, it's a blessing to have all these opportunities, going to KC and raising everything like that, just to be able to represent the city and be known out here.
Well, your recruiting process is winding down, but tell the fans and interested folks out there, what's the best part of being kind of a high-profile recruit, and what's the worst part about being a high-profile recruit?
The best part is you get to have a lot of connections with the coaches and stuff like that, and be able to take these opportunities to experience different things. And the worst part is, at a point in time in recruiting, it will get stressful, but just hang in there, so good everything you do. Don't listen to whatever anybody else gets to do.
When you make that decision here in a couple weeks, is that going to be final? You'll kind of turn the phone off and just strictly go into senior mode?
Yes, sir.
And speaking, last but not least, of senior mode, how excited are you for this season with this team and a league that looks as challenging and as good as ever?
I mean, we're looking pretty good. I'm looking forward to the season. You know, we're a 6A program, so it's going to be tough throughout the season, but I feel like we're going to do it and getting that.
That was Blue Springs defensive lineman Ronelle Johnson. Wanted to say thanks to Johnson for taking the time to talk to us today, and thanks to Coach Paulson for really throwing open the doors for us and showing off his program. We had a really good time today. Thanks as well to all of you for watching and listening to us here on the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. If you're listening on an audio platform, find us at our new home on Apple and Spotify through KCSN. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.